Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are in the world right now. I'm sure your life has in some way impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. So I hope that you're safe, you're taking care of yourself and others. I also want to, at the outset, express solidarity with all the millions of young people who are marching on the streets here in the United States, but also around the world, as Natalia said, calling to an end to prejudice, racism, structural discrimination, police brutality, and oppression. So this meeting comes at a timely opportunity to all of us to unite behind accountability and evaluation as a tool to hold governments and policymakers accountable. So let me start out by congratulating the organizers of this event, Eval for Action campaign co-leaders and partners, particularly the Eval Youth Global Network. Khalil, what an inspiring opening you just made, really bringing us all behind you as your supporters, and you as the Youth Network on Evaluation leading this effort, UNFPA and the Global Parliamentarians Forum, chaired by an Honorable Member of Parliament from my home country, Sri Lanka, Honorable Kabir Hashim. Very honored to share this stage with you as well, Honorable Member of Parliament. I am thrilled to speak to you today because promoting youth-led accountability for the Sustainable Development Goals is at the core of my mandate as the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. When the Secretary General launched his strategy, Youth 2030, United Nations First Youth Strategy, it spoke about the UN not only working for young people, but the UN working with young people. And this event, this campaign, this initiative today being led by Eval Youth Global Network is a good example of how the UN can not only work for young people, but can work with young people in partnership. And young people bring innovation, technology, and creativity and connectivity into these initiatives and campaigns, and particularly to evaluation, that I think we can all benefit from. So in the recent years, youth has become a bit of a buzzword. This is great, of course, but their involvement, unfortunately, is too often limited to consultations, or they're tasked with responsibilities for implementation. So it should be all of our mission to make sure that young people are not only included in consultations, but also they're included in all phases of our work, from allocating budgets to designing programs to monitoring their implementation and critically reviewing their progress. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development recognizes young people as torchbearers. And currently our world is the youngest it has ever been. UNFPA statistics says that over 1.8 billion young people are there between the ages of 10 and 24 in our world. And the success of the failure of the Sustainable Development Goals will directly affect the empowerment and opportunities of this generation of young people, the majority of whom call the Global South and developing countries their home. Even though they are undoubtedly the generation that is most impacted by the delivery of the 2030 Agenda, young people are not passively waiting for change to happen. Young people like Khalil and all the others on this call are taking matters into their own hands, leading initiatives in their communities, in their countries, and at the global level to advance the monitoring and implementation of the SDGs. With just 10 years to go, accelerated action in speed and scope is needed to meet the goals, and young people must be at the forefront. We need to strengthen youth-led accountability processes at different levels, global to regional to local, building the capacity of young evaluators and advocating for strengthening national evaluation systems and capacities together with other stakeholders. This is why I'm so excited about the launch of the Decade of Evaluation of Action. Not only is the Eval for Action campaign aligned with the UN Youth Strategy and the Decade of Action, this campaign also has a youth network, Eval for Youth, as a campaign co-leader. Dear friends and colleagues, in my work, I'm lucky to meet young people from all over the world leading action in their local communities. And one thing is clear. Although young people often do not have a seat at the decision-making table, and there are so many barriers that prevent their participation, they still find creative and innovative informal ways to take the lead. whether it is through their own work, campaigns to improve meaningful youth participation, shadow reporting, providing citizen-generated data, designing their own youth-led monitoring frameworks, or championing awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals at the local and national level, young people are committed to making the 2030 Agenda a success. So to capture some of these stories and good examples of youth-led accountability, my office, in partnership with ActionAid Denmark, Restless Development, and the Major Group for Children and Youth, recently launched a working paper titled Believe in Better. And my team right now will post the link to that paper we developed on the comment section, so all of you can read and contribute and send us your feedback and input as well. This paper provides concrete recommendations for governments, civil society, international organizations on how to make accountability processes more inclusive of young people in all their diversity. While we don't have time to go through the rich material that it has, I wanted to highlight a few main things. First, we need to strengthen meaningful youth inclusion in the accountability processes. Information, for an example, presented by the voluntary national reviews annually by the high-level political forum could benefit from the work of the young evaluators and young accountability leaders. To avoid consultation fatigue, as I mentioned earlier, we must focus on accountability back to young people as well, and give feedback and mentorship to young evaluators to keep improving their work. We also need to strengthen ownership of the SDG agenda at all levels by creating inclusive accountability processes. In strengthening capacities of young evaluators, we must enable spaces and build inclusive processes where young people in all their diversity, especially young women and girls, as Natalia mentioned, young indigenous people, young people living with disabilities, young people who identify as LGBTQI, and other vulnerable youth can participate in a meaningful and safe way with dignity. Enhanced and more inclusive evaluation provides evidence, lessons, and pathways to strengthen equality for all. If young people are not part of measuring progress of the SDGs, then we are leaving an entire generation behind. The midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected all our lives, this conversation is more important than ever. The global crisis caused by the coronavirus pandemic widened social and economic inequalities and highlighted some of the deep-rooted structural inequalities in our societies. And these socio-economic impacts disproportionately affect the present and the future of young people. Still, around the world, young people are at the forefront, demanding accountability from decision makers. So now is the time to even further strengthen their meaningful and inclusive participation in formal processes that lead to actual change. So to conclude, I want to welcome the launch of the Eval for Action campaign and congratulate all the partners once again. And I'm convinced that this will be an important platform for our common advocacy to put youth-led accountability at the front and center of the Decade of Action. Thank you very much.